Okay, this machine right here is called the table saw. If I were to ask you guys if you had an idea of which machine that would be the most versatile, I would definitely recommend it to be this one. And the reason why is because you can do a large number of operations with just this machine. For instance, I can cut boards to width, which I'll go over, push straight through your fence. I can also cut boards to length using a miter gauge in this slot here. I can also do advanced operations where I can physically tilt the blade and cut miters for like a picture frame. There are a lot of different things that you can do with this. Because it is so widely used, there's a lot of accidents on this machine. And not typically just from cutting your fingers, which is what most people think about, but there's a phenomenon that's called kickback. I've referenced it in some of my other videos. But if you look behind me, actually on this drywall wall, some holes are located there because students had some kickbacks. I want to emphasize that if you are safe using this machine, you will not get hurt. If you know what you're doing, you're not going to get hurt. So the things that I'm going to tell you are going to set yourself up to be as safe as possible whenever you use this. First and foremost, if you're ripping a board, which means cutting a board to width along the grain, if you're cutting a board to width, you do not want to stand right where I'm at. Okay? If there would be a kickback, it would be an awfully uncomfortable experience. Okay? You always want to stand slightly off to the side. And it's going to help us for two different reasons. First and foremost is if there's a kickback, it's going to go straight back and we're out of the way. Secondly, as we're using this, we're using the fence right here to guide the board against it so that it's always parallel with this blade. Some cheaper table saws, they have a fence that does not self-straighten. That's a problem because you always have to check to make sure that this is parallel. For instance, if this fence is at an angle to the blade, if it's at an angle to the blade and you try pushing the board through, you are automatically cutting a wedge in this board. That's creating a lot of extra friction, and remember, as with all machines in here, friction is your enemy. Eventually the board's going to win, the saw's going to win, it's going to throw the board back. So to reduce the friction, you have to have a self-straightening fence, or if you don't have one, always double check with the tape measure. Once you lock this down, check at the beginning of the blade, it's at 5, I'll set it at 5. It's at 5 inches. Notice I'm going from the inside of the blade to the fence. I'm not going from the outside of the blade. Remember on the radial arm saw, we talked about thickness of the blade. We lose this thickness of the blade every time we cut something. So if I was cutting a board 5 inches wide, I'd measure from the inside of the teeth to the fence. So this side is good. I'm going to double check on this side. It is perfect. Now I do have a self-straightening fence, so it's very nice. Okay. Something I didn't cover yet, whenever we lock this particular fence down, we only do the back knob first, and then we do the top knob. The reason why is we don't want to do them at the same time is because the self-straightening action occurs when we do the bottom one, and then the top one just locks this side of the fence in place. So it has to self-straighten before we want to lock this in place. That's the purpose for that. Next thing that we talk about is the actual blade height. As far as blade height goes, we want the top of the blade, if you're looking straight at it, if you think of it as a clock, the very peak of it is 12 o'clock. This right here, this is a combination blade, so there's some small teeth and then there's some large teeth. This piece right here, this little divot in, is called a gullet, G-U-L-L-E-T. I didn't name it, I don't know why it's called that. This has to clear the thickness of your board when it's in the 12 o'clock position. So if I take a look at this, it still needs to go up just a little bit. And the reason for that is friction. Whenever the saw blade cuts through the wood, it doesn't automatically vaporize it like a laser. It turns it into sawdust, and then that sawdust has to go somewhere. So the sawdust gets trapped inside the gullet, and it gets thrown down into here, into the dust collection system, and then outside. Okay? So that's the blade height. Okay, I have this set up to rip a 2-inch wide board. Okay? Fence is taken care of, blade height is taken care of. I already have the push stick in my right hand. Even if you're left-handed, you still operate it like this, okay? I have a push stick in my right hand. Now what I will do is, I will push it straight through the blade here, and as I'm pushing it through here, you do not want to stop pushing with your push stick until the board has cleared the blade. Many times I'll see students that once it just cuts through, they let go. Well, there's nowhere else for that board to go than besides back. So you have to be kind of aggressive with it. but just push it just through here. Now whenever you guys use this machine, you will have a helper that's going to be over there just to catch the boards. What the helper does not do, the helper does not pull the board through, because what might happen, maybe the second board, the third board, they might not be paying attention, and the person that's operating the table saw, they're expecting you to pull it through, and for some reason you don't, and there's some miscommunication somewhere, then the board's going to shoot back in a kickback accident. So that's why it's your job as the operator. You are in control. You push the board the whole way through the blade. They're just there just to receive the board. So here we go. Now I will hold this in place until the blade stops spinning, because you never want to reach around the blade, let alone behind a saw blade. So once it's done spinning, I'll grab it. And here we go. 2 inches from here to here, as it is 2 inches from here to here. The last operation I want to cover with the table saw is called a crosscut. Now we already did something similar on the radial arm saw, but this machine, like I said before, is very versatile. So we can actually use this miter slot right here to hold a board and cut it across the grain. Remember guys, the grain's going this way. Okay, so we're actually cutting across the grain with this miter gauge right here. Now whenever we do this, you do not want to have the fence engaged. You don't want to be using the fence here, because take a look here. If I would have this locked into place and I'm trying to cut it to this length, as it cuts here and it's cut the whole way through, there is nowhere for this board to go. It's going to want to bind in between here. It's going to rattle back and forth and then throw back. So that's why we never have a fence to use whenever we're cutting a miter here. Now, it's called a miter for a couple different reasons. First and foremost, we generally cut things at 90 degrees to the blade. However, if we're making a picture frame and we want to have a unique style to it, we'll set this at 45 degrees and we will cut it. It'll give us a 45-degree angle. 45 plus 45 gives us 90. So essentially, I'll have 2 boards that meet at a 45-degree angle. So anyways, I'm just going to do this at 90 degrees or 0, depending on how you're looking at it. Just as a quick demo. My hands are out of the way. Okay, so nothing's over here. I'm going to hold on with 2 hands, turn the blade on, push it the whole way through, slide it over, bring it back, while the piece that we cut off is sitting over here. Okay, here we go. Now I will never grab scrap while that is still spinning, while still waiting to shut off completely, okay? I will never do that, and you don't want to do that either. Let's be safe. Okay, so it stops spinning, I'll grab the piece and I'll throw it in the scrap.